The valley awakes before the sun. Cold air slides between low hills, and the grass bends as if it already knows what is coming. Somewhere in the distance, hooves drum the earth, not in panic, not in retreat, in certainty. For 60 years, that sound has meant only one thing: the end. This place is called Ain Jalut, a narrow cut of land where the world is about to hold its breath. By nightfall, empires will question their immortality. By nightfall, a myth will bleed. But no one here believes that yet. They believe the stories. Everyone does. Stories of cities erased so completely that rivers ran black with ink and red with blood. Stories of walls pulled down stone by stone, of libraries burned until memory itself seemed to scream. Stories that say resistance is pointless because heaven itself rides with the conquerors. Those conquerors are the Mongols, men raised in the saddle, born into motion, shaped by war until fear no longer lives in them. They are the living edge of the Mongol Empire, the largest empire the world has ever seen. From the forests of the north to the deserts of the south, they have learned one lesson: no one stands, everyone breaks. Their general today is Kitbuka, a veteran of endless victories. He has watched kingdoms fold like cloth. He has seen proud rulers beg. He expects the same here. Why wouldn't he? History has never argued with him before. Waiting for him in this valley is an army the world barely understands. They are not nobles, not heirs, not men born into banners and titles. They are former slaves, boys taken from distant homes, stripped of names, rebuilt through discipline and pain. They learned to ride before they learned to belong. They learned to fight before they learned to hope. Together, they became something new, the warriors of the Mamluk Sultanate. Their ruler is Kutuz, a man who climbed from obscurity to a throne surrounded by enemies. He did not inherit power, he survived his way into it. And survival has taught him a brutal truth: some moments do not allow caution. Weeks earlier, Mongol envoys rode into Pyro with a message written in certainty: submit or be erased, like Baghdad had been erased, like so many others before it. The threat was not a bluff. Everyone knew that. Kutuz answered by killing the messengers. It was not madness. It was a line drawn in blood, a signal sent not just to the Mongols, but to his own men. There would be no negotiation with extinction. So here, in this quiet valley, the Mamluks wait. Not behind walls, not inside cities, but out in the open, where myths expect obedience. The sun begins to rise. Hooves grow louder, and somewhere between those hills, history leans forward. If stories like this matter to you, stories of forgotten courage and moments the world tried to bury, stay close. What happens next will decide whether fear rules the future or whether it can finally be taught to retreat. Before the valley, before the horns, before history decided to hesitate, there were boys who did not belong to anyone. They were taken young, too young to understand borders, too young to remember the exact sound of their mother's voice, pulled from villages along distant frontiers, sold in markets where human lives were measured by muscle and bone. Their names were replaced, their pasts erased. What remained was potential and obedience. This was how the Mamluks were made. They did not grow up dreaming of banners or glory. They grew up inside courtyards and training grounds, where days began before dawn and ended only when the body failed. Horses were not symbols to them. They were extensions of the self. Weapons were not tools. They were languages. Pain was constant, discipline absolute. And yet, something unexpected formed inside that cruelty: brotherhood. Stripped of family, tribe, and homeland, the Mamluks built loyalty where nothing else was allowed to exist. Not to blood, not to birth, to each other, to survival, to belief. They were taught that freedom would come only after mastery, and mastery demanded everything. By the time they earned their release, they were no longer slaves in any meaningful sense. They were professionals in a world of amateurs, soldiers trained not just to fight, but to endure. Kutuz understood this because he had lived it. He had been one of them once, a boy taken, a man remade. The throne beneath him was not inherited, it was seized from chaos. Egypt in those years was a place of shadows and knives. Sultans rose quickly and fell faster. Power was never secure. Trust was always temporary. When the Mongols destroyed Baghdad, the shock rippled through every court and every street. Scholars fled, merchants whispered. Ordinary people stopped believing tomorrow was guaranteed. If Baghdad could vanish, nowhere was safe. That fear reached Cairo long before the Mongol horses did. Advisors urged caution. Tribute could be paid, borders negotiated, survival purchased. Kutuz listened and rejected every word. He had seen what surrender bought, not peace, delay. Baybars saw the same truth, but from a different angle. He studied Mongol victories like patterns carved into stone: speed, shock, psychological terror. They did not simply defeat armies, they broke will. Cities collapsed before swords ever touched them. The Mongols did not need to win every battle. They only needed to convince the world they were inevitable. So Baybars proposed something dangerous. Do not meet fear with fear. Meet certainty with deception. He suggested drawing the Mongols into terrain that strangled their greatest strength, a place where speed meant nothing, where formations fractured, where confidence could become a trap. A valley, Ain Jalut. Kutuz agreed, but not without adding his own risk. He would ride with them, not behind them, not above them, with them. His generals protested. Rulers did not expose themselves. If the Sultan fell, everything fell. But Kutuz knew the weight of what he was asking these men to do. They were being told to stand against a force that had never been stopped, against stories that said resistance was suicide. They needed more than orders. They needed proof. So the army marched north, not as subjects following a distant ruler, but as brothers following a man willing to bleed beside them. The valley waited, and with every mile closer, the question sharpened in the silence between hoofbeats. When the moment comes, will fear remember how to rule, or will it finally learn what it feels like to be hunted? Morning arrives quietly, the way it always does before violence. A pale light slips into the valley, touching stone and grass as if nothing important is about to happen. The air is cold enough to sting the lungs, perfect weather for horses, perfect weather for men who believe the day already belongs to them. The first Mongol riders appear just after sunrise. They come fast, light cavalry, scouts. Their job is simple: find the enemy, provoke movement, report back. They have done this 1,000 times. Every army reacts the same way: panic, disorder, flight. Ahead of them, a small group of Mamluk horsemen waits in the open. Too small, too exposed. The Mongols do not slow down. Arrows fly before words ever could. The sky darkens briefly as bowstrings sing. The Mamluks turn and ride away, exactly as expected. The chase begins. From the Mongol perspective, it is already over. Retreat means weakness. Retreat means victory is close. Their horses surge forward, hooves tearing at the earth, momentum pulling them deeper into the valley. But something is wrong. The retreat is too controlled. The Mamluks do not scatter. They do not break formation. Even as they pull back, they turn in their saddles, loosing arrows with practiced calm. Mongol riders fall. Not many, just enough to irritate, just enough to confuse. Still, the Mongols press on. This is how it always starts. The valley narrows. Rock walls rise higher on either side, squeezing the path, forcing the riders into tighter lines. Dust hangs in the air, blurring distance. Sound changes here. Hoofbeats echo. Shouts bounce back, unfamiliar, distorted. The Mongol scouts disappear around a bend. Behind them, the main force arrives. Thousands of riders pour forward, confident, relentless. Somewhere ahead, fighting can be heard, but not clearly seen. The terrain hides the enemy. The narrow pass swallows vision. This is the moment where caution should speak. It does not. For 60 years, hesitation has been a foreign concept. Waiting has never been rewarded. Speed has always been the answer. The Mongols move as they always have, forward, harder, faster. The army floods into the valley, and then the sound changes. At first, it is distant, a low vibration carried by stone and air. Then it grows louder, deeper, surrounding. Horns. Not one, not a signal from ahead, from everywhere. From the hills, from behind, from the slopes that moments ago seemed empty. The ground itself appears to rise. Mamluk cavalry bursts from hidden positions, banners snapping, armor flashing in the light. They come from both sides, cutting off retreat, sealing the narrow exit behind the Mongols. What looked like a chase becomes a cage. And then, from within the storm of noise and steel, a figure rides forward. He removes his helmet, he throws it to the ground, and he screams, not an order, not a command, but a cry that cuts through fear itself. The battle pauses just long enough for everyone to understand what is about to happen. Because when a ruler chooses to stand and bleed, history listens. The scream does not sound like strategy. It sounds like desperation sharpened into resolve. Kutuz stands in the open, helmet gone, armor scarred, voice raw as it tears through the valley. He is no longer a sultan issuing commands from safety. He is a man daring death to come closer. The effect is immediate. Mamluk riders see him, not as a distant ruler, but as one of them, bleeding, exposed, unprotected. In that instant, something ignites that training alone could never create. This is not duty anymore. This is defiance. They surge forward, not in neat lines, not with careful spacing,
but with fury built from stolen childhoods and earned freedom, from years spent being told their lives were expendable, from knowing that retreat means annihilation. The Mongols feel it. They have faced numbers before. They have faced courage before. But this is different. These men do not break. They do not scatter when charged. They close ranks. They counter. They fight like warriors who believe the ground beneath them matters. Steel crashes into steel. Horses collide. The valley becomes a choking corridor of violence. Arrows are loosed at distances too close for comfort. Swords rise and fall without ceremony. Somewhere in the chaos, Kitbuka pushes forward, refusing to yield ground. He has never known defeat, and he will not accept it now. He rallies his men, driving them toward the southern exit, the last hope of open terrain. For a brief, terrifying moment, it almost works. Mongol riders punch through a section of Mamluk lines. The pressure shifts, the battle teeters. If they break free, if they reach the open desert, the tide could turn all over again. Kutuz rides into the breach. No guards, no hesitation. He fights as if the outcome depends on his blade alone. Men fall around him. His horse stumbles, recovers. Dust coats his face. Blood, his and others, darkens the ground. The Mamluks see it, and they answer. They collapse inward, sealing the gap, cutting off momentum. The Mongol charge loses shape. Speed dies in the crush. What was once fluid becomes trapped mass. Kitbuka is surrounded. He fights until the end comes for him the only way he has ever known, facing forward. When he falls, the sound ripples outward, not a cheer, a realization. This army can die. The Mongols do not surrender. They never have. They fight on in pockets, breaking apart, isolated, overwhelmed. By afternoon, resistance fades into slaughter. By sunset, the valley belongs to the men who were never meant to matter. Silence returns slowly. Bodies litter the ground. Horses wander riderless. The air smells of iron and dust. The sun sinks low, casting long shadows across the valley that had dared to refuse inevitability. The victory is total, but its weight is heavier than triumph, because everyone there understands what has just happened. For the first time in generations, the unstoppable has been stopped, and once fear learns it can bleed, it never rules the same way. Night settles over the valley like a held breath finally released. Fires burn low. The wounded moan softly. Survivors move through the dark, counting the living, closing the eyes of the dead. There is no celebration, no shouting, no victory songs. Everyone here understands the scale of what they've done and what it will cost. Because battles end in valleys, but consequences travel. Word moves faster than armies ever could. From campfires to caravan roads, from whispered prayers to shouted disbelief, the story spreads. The Mongols, defeated, not delayed, not negotiated with, destroyed. In Cairo, fear loosens its grip for the first time in years. People step into the streets and look at each other differently. Not hopeful yet, just lighter, as if a shadow that had pressed on their chests has shifted just enough to let them breathe. In Damascus, survivors who had lived under occupation dared to speak openly again. In villages across the region, parents tell their children a story they never thought they'd tell, that the conquerors can fall. But the shockwave does not stop there. Far to the east, months later, the news reaches Mongol courts. It arrives quietly, carried by exhausted riders and reluctant messengers. At first, it is dismissed, lies spread by frightened enemies, rumors meant to slow the advance. Then details emerge, names, locations, numbers, an entire army gone. For the Mongols, this is more than a defeat. It is an interruption in destiny. Their empire was built on momentum, on the belief that heaven itself had granted them endless forward motion. Ain Jalut introduces something dangerous into that belief: doubt. Commanders begin to argue. Caution replaces confidence. Resources shift. Armies that might have pushed west are pulled back to secure other frontiers. The dream of unstoppable expansion fractures, not all at once, but enough to change direction. Closer to home, the victory carries a darker edge. Kutuz does not return to Cairo as a legend allowed to rest. Power in his world is never safe. On the road back, he is assassinated by rivals who fear his strength more than they honor his courage. The man who stood helmetless in the valley does not die in glory, but in betrayal. And yet, his moment cannot be erased. Baibars rises to rule next, hardened by war and sharpened by victory. He understands that Ain Jalut was not an ending, it was a window, one that could close just as quickly as it opened. Under his leadership, the Mamluks move fast. They reclaim territory, they fortify borders, they ensure the Mongols never again find easy passage into the heart of the region. What began as survival becomes strategy. What began as defiance becomes policy. Years pass. The Mongol Empire, still vast, begins to strain under its own size. Internal divisions grow. Generals turn against each other. The unified machine that once rolled over continents splinters into rival powers, more concerned with internal survival than endless conquest. And in the cities spared by that single valley, libraries rebuild, markets reopen, knowledge moves again. The world quietly resumes a future that had almost been erased. Most people will never hear the names of the men who stood there. No monuments mark the place. No towering statues demand remembrance. But history remembers impact, not intention. And somewhere between the dust and the silence of Ain Jalut, the idea of inevitability died. The only question left is this: if one valley could stop an empire, what else has history convinced us cannot be challenged simply because no one has tried yet?
Centuries pass easily than moments. The valley grows silent again. Grass returns. Hooves no longer thunder through the pass. Wind moves freely where armor once collided. If you stood there long enough, you would never guess what the ground remembers. History rarely marks the places where it hesitated. Empires fall loudly, burning capitals, collapsing walls, names carved into ruins. But the moments that truly change direction often leave no trace at all. Ain Jalut is one of those places, a pause in inevitability, a breath between certainties. The men who fought there fade quickly from memory. Former slaves do not make comfortable legends. They do not fit neatly into stories about kings chosen by destiny. Their power came from something less romantic and far more dangerous: the willingness to stand when surrender was logical. That lesson unsettled the world. After Ain Jalut, conquest slowed. not just for the Mongols, but for everyone who had believed size alone guaranteed survival. Armies began to fear terrain. Leaders learned that belief could be broken, that discipline could defeat terror, that people with nothing left to lose were the most dangerous force of all. The Mongols adapted, but the spell was gone. Future enemies remembered the valley. They copied the tactics. They refused to panic. Expansion became harder, more expensive, less certain. And slowly, without ceremony, the age of effortless conquest ended. Meanwhile, life resumed in places that should not have survived. Knowledge preserved in ink and memory continued its quiet journey west. Ideas crossed borders that armies no longer could. Generations grew up never knowing how close their world came to erasure, all because one ruler chose exposure over safety, because one army refused to act as history expected, because fear, once wounded, never fully recovers. Today, there is no grand monument at Ain Jalut, no polished stone explaining what happened. Travelers pass through unawares, chasing modern destinations, never realizing they are walking across the moment when the world proved it was not finished being written. That may be the most honest ending, because real power doesn't demand remembrance, it changes outcomes and lets time do the rest. If stories like this matter to you, stories where forgotten people shape everything that comes after, stay with this journey. History still hides many moments like this one, waiting quietly for someone to listen. And if there's one thing Ain Jalut teaches us, it's this: no empire is eternal, no fear is absolute, and sometimes the world changes not with thunder, but with a single refusal to kneel.